new royal. The last thing she took out was her new leather tool belt. Popo had said he would fill it with tools as soon as they got to their new project. Trina buckled it around her waist and looked at herself in the mirror. Standing there in her jean shorts and her blue t-shirt, with a bruise on her knee and her Diamondbacks baseball cap covering her short brown hair, she didn't look like the princess who must have lived in this pretty room. Instead, she looked like a skinny tomboy, like she always had. She took off her tool belt and hung it on one of the hooks. With all the work to do at Goldenrod, she would need to keep it handy. Azusa! Azusa! Trina stood still and listened. The noise had sounded like a sputter or a saw or something like that. Popo? She hollered. No answer. Trina crept into the hall and leaned over the railing. Popo! She called a second time. Only her echo answered, but then she heard the noise again. A z-z-z, z-z-z. Popo! She screamed as she raced down the stairs. When she got to the bottom step, she could see her dad's truck coming to a stop in the yard. She dashed through the front door and down the plank steps and sunshine right up to her dad, who was climbing out of the truck. Popo! She shouted. But he didn't seem to notice she was so scared she could hardly breathe. You won't believe Hank's Tool and Lumber, he said, straight out of an old movie. With a tin ceiling and all these big wooden barrels full of who knows what and buckets of nails and screws. It's a mess, but Hank knows where everything is. He put on his work gloves and started pulling out long boards from the back of the truck, stacking them on the ground. Cedar. Trina could smell the sweet wood from where she stood. Hey, he checked his pockets one by one. I got you something from Hank's. Finally, he fished out a sucker. Trina grimaced. The sucker had a loop on the end. Popo, this kind of sucker's for babies. She pulled at the wrapper, but the plastic on the candy had melted together. And it's 1,000,000 years old. Mine tasted okay, he said. Trina did her best to smile, twirling the baby sucker between her fingers, and decided not to breathe a word about scaring herself silly or about the noises. I picked out our rooms. We both get fireplaces. We just need to bring in the mattresses. Fireplace, huh? Just what I need on a scorcher like today. He ducked into the cargo trailer and pushed the mattresses to the door. Grab an end, he called. I'm running out of energy in this heat. They carried in Trina's mattress first. As they crossed the foyer, headed for the staircase, Trina let go and the mattress fell to the floor. I can't make it another step, Papa. Besides, we'll boil to death if we sleep upstairs. Then we'll sleep in the parlor until I can get the boards off the windows and the screens on, he said. They pushed Trina's mattress into the parlor and made a second trip for his mattress. Just as they let it fall to the floor, there was a loud clang from the parlor fireplace, followed by a billowing black cloud. What's that? Trina squawked, jumping next to her dad. Soot, he said. The flue must have fallen closed. But how does a flue close by itself? Her dad wiped his brow. Well, it's either a negative pressure or, with a sly grin, he scooped her up and twirled her in the air. Tiny flue fairies live in the chimney. And when they got too hot, Popo, put me down, she said. But for the moment she liked being safe in his arms. When he set her on the floor, the front door blew shut and the house was dark again, and Trina went back to being scared. Her dad walked quickly to the door and Trina followed closely behind. He twisted the knob and fiddled with the lock, but it wouldn't open. Great, one more thing I have to fix. Let me try, Trina said. She turned the knob and the door opened easily. Looks like you have the magic touch, her dad said. Maybe we should just prop it open. I did prop it open, Trina muttered, a little frightened by the idea that she may have a magic touch. She looked out at the corn stalks and the goldenrod. Everything was as still as it could be, and then she spotted her handy tree lying at the bottom of the step. How in the world does a door blow shut when it's not even windy? Her dad folded his arms and thought for a moment. Imagine if you hadn't opened your mouth in 100 years. You might get used to keeping it shut, he said. If I hadn't opened my mouth for 100 years, I think I'd have a lot to say. So, you think Goldenrod's trying to tell us something, do you? She sure did. Goldenrod was telling them she was a haunted house, but Trina knew better than to say that out loud to her dad, so she just shrugged. Trina spent the next couple of hours helping her dad. They unloaded the rest of the wood and set up the power tools, mostly in the parlor. This is the fanciest workroom I've ever had, her dad said. And then she held the tape measure, and he mapped out the porch and made more notes. When it was dinner time, she lit one of the giant burners on the big black stove. It popped and smoked with burning dust before the flames settled into a perfect blue ring beneath the spaghetti pot. What's for dinner? Her dad said, coming into the kitchen, carrying his oil can and screwdriver. Let me guess, sushi? Yep, Trina said, and chocolate mousse for dessert. He worked on the squeaky swinging door while the spaghetti boiled. When it was done, Trina heaped 2 piles of sticky spaghetti onto paper plates and carried them one at a time to the card table in the dining room. Oops, I forgot the chopsticks. She hurried back into the kitchen and returned with a pair of forks and a jar of spaghetti sauce, which she poured cold onto each steaming mound of spaghetti. With a mouthful of spaghetti and a twinkle in his eye, her dad announced, "First dinner on the new project. You know what this means. It's time to play Don't Remind Me," Trina spluttered with her mouth full of spaghetti. Her dad beat her to the first question. "Worst dinner. Go." Trina swallowed fast. "The barbecued snake in the desert. Worst motel. Go." "The pink one in Wisconsin where our key unlocked all the doors. Funniest moment. Go." He slurped up a few strands of spaghetti. This one took Trina a minute. Papa worked so hard there, he hadn't been a lot of funny moments. At least not lately. She put a big forkful of spaghetti in her mouth, thinking, "Ding, ding, ding," he said, tapping his plastic cup with his plastic fork. 5 seconds remain. 5, 4, 3. When we went to the beach in Oregon and you, Trina started laughing. "You ran and got a lifeguard to rescue a dog that was swimming too deep in the waves and it turned out to be a sea lion." Now Trina was laughing so hard that she was afraid spaghetti would shoot out of her nose. And who told me to run for the lifeguard?" "I did, but I already knew it wasn't a dog." And she batted her eyes at him. He stopped twisting his spaghetti around his fork and looked up. "You what?" "Worst night," Trina said, quickly resuming the game and changing the subject. "Go." Her dad answered this one a little sadly. "When we got snowed in Minnesota, I thought they'd never dig us out." "Best night. Go." "When we got snowed in Minnesota," Trina smiled, watching her dad eat, waiting for him to respond. He looked up confused. "It was the best night, Papo, because we had popcorn and cocoa for dinner and played Crazy Eights by the lantern in front of the fire. It was the best night ever." And it really had been the best night, waiting out the storm together. "Ding, ding, ding," her dad said, tapping his plastic cup again. "Trina wins by landslide." Then he pushed his plate to the center of the card table and left a trail of tomato sauce. "You know, Papa, if we're going to be here a whole year, Maybe we should get a few real plates and stop wasting paper. Good idea, he said. He pulled out his notebook and scribbled as he talked. I'll put it on the list for tomorrow, along with building a new porch, rewiring the house. And should you see the attic, it looks like Frankenstein's lab up there. And then I'll put in a new septic system. He tapped his pencil against his chin. Oh yeah, and I need to get the screens on the windows. With a heavy sigh, he said, there's only one way to cope with all that work. How? Trina said. With a good night's sleep. It's time for me to hit the hay. I'll get the sleeping bags from the truck if you wash up the dishes, he said with a smile. Sleeping in the parlor was like sleeping in an enormous cavern. The tiniest noises sounded as if they were blown through bullhorns, and if the impossible heat didn't wake Trina up every little while, her dad's snoring did. When he started to sound like a chainsaw, she stopped trying to sleep at all. She lay there, blearily looking up, staring at the ceiling. Enough moonlight trickled in between the cracks of the boards covering the bay window to make the chandelier twinkle like a little handful of stars in a black sky. It made her homesick for Portland. Worst project go, she thought to herself. Goldenrod hands down. 6 bedrooms, 4 fireplaces, and a library. So what? It would be nothing but work and loneliness. 6 bedrooms and 1 turret room. Trina sat up, alert and wide awake now. Where was the door to the turret room? What, Popo?